Hello, everyone. It's a Thursday, so we're going to be reacting to major entertainment headlines as generated by an online news headline generator. I'll rush through some of the headlines it generated before talking about this week's major entertainment industry headline. Okay, so we have several Taylor Swift headlines, one records being broken after the next, from what I can see here. As I said last week, the news is that it's just happening. The first time Taylor Swift songs blocked the entirety of the Billboard Hot 100 Top 10 slots was back in 2022. So I'm surprised it's just in 2025 that all these major records are being smashed. I've been seeing headlines criticizing the album's quality though. I still haven't given it a listen, so I can't make any official comments on it yet. I've heard snippets of the track I believe is called The Fate of Ophelia, and they haven't sounded particularly awful by any regard. Then again, I also liked Fortnite a lot, even though people hated it and also hated the parent album. Okay, it also appears that some form of event took place in honor of the album's release and it reportedly grossed over 46 million in USD. That's quite the paycheck if you ask me. Then again, Taylor's fan base has only grown exponentially over the years, so none of this is any bit surprising. I wish her the best with this new project. Okay, there's also mention here of the Saudi Arabia Riyadh season, which a lot of comedians caught fire for performing at. We spoke at length about these kinds of interactions yesterday with emphasis on the EA interaction with the Saudi government. Our conclusion yesterday was that these types of acts are, for a fact, immoral. However, we also arrived at the understanding that in a capitalist system, people tend to involve themselves in not so pure acts for survival. And before you say, well, since all these comedians are already filthy rich, right? What more could they possibly want? As we discussed a few weeks back, when Elon Musk's net worth was reported to be $500 billion USD. A net worth doesn't necessarily equate to cash at hand, you get. It could be more than the cash you have at hand. It could be less. A net worth is just a way of saying what the selling price of an individual or entity is. Saying that in capitalism, even human beings still aren't of the capitalist chopping block. Let's also not forget that not many studios are offering comedians the kind of figures I imagine the Saudi entity offered them. Also bear in mind that entertainment gigs, be that acting, stand-up performance, they are generally a once in a while kind of thing. Think of it really. How often do you see even like a Dave Chappelle doing something major each year, right? So it's possible these comedians needed this money. It's possible also they may not have needed the money at the moment, but are trying to secure their futures as part of the byproducts of capitalism as we have it today is a steep fear of scarcity. So the act is immoral, we can argue, but it's definitely understandable still. Okay. The Kim Kardashian hairy underwear headline is also here. Well, I suppose if you shop from SKIMS or are a fan of Kim, you might already be aware of this. It's simply just her public means of participation in capitalism, really. Products, the hairy underwear promotion, social media and news headlines or news outlets doing their best to make this a big deal. As for price, not sure, but sure it's enough to recoup the expensive probably. then for place, the SKIMS website, I guess. And I think she also did an interview recently as well, where she stated that she didn't know the price of milk. Okay, so which adds to the promotion of the product as well. So, yeah, no one can be blamed for trying to survive in a capitalist society, is what I'll say there. Last headline before we get to the main one is that there's apparently going to be an alternative Super Bowl in separation of American values. I mean, it's surprising how these people are still on this non-issue. Do you get, like, as we said last week, Bad Bunny is a citizen of the United States whose first language just happens to be Spanish. That is all. I do not understand why there's a sudden need for an alternative Super Bowl. Okay, this goes to a lot of things that many Americans in like this conservative Christian society do. Like let's use what's called contemporary Christian music as an example. Many Americans in the conservative Christian society will, they'll demonize all forms of secular music, irrespective of how pure it is. And, hold this part, right? They'll even criticize the beats as demonic, okay? Or of the devil. But the kicker here, right? The kicker therein is that all that someone needs to do, right, to make a Christian quote unquote song is use those exact beats, but ad-lib, but ad-lib Jesus periodically. Okay. Again, it's almost the exact same song down to the rapping flow and the beats. All that's changed is the lyrics, period. And it's all of a sudden spirit-filled. You get? That's what contemporary Christian music essentially is. That's why Kanye West could go from a producer of demonic quote-unquote music to winning a Grammy for Best Contemporary Christian Music Album. Mind you, by the way, Grammys are voted for by other musicians in the same field, meaning that most likely more than enough Christian artists saw Kanye West worthy of a win in this field. So the parallel I'm trying to draw with this example is the needless obsession with these sects, particularly conservative sects from the US having their own version of things. It's especially, considering that part of the core tenets of faith generally is that things of the creator supersede things of the enemy. Right? And those who stand with the creator and obey the creator will reap their rewards in full, is it not? So then, like, how and why are the people who proclaim to be true servants of the creator so triggered by worldly products and events that they need to make their own versions of these things? You get that, is that, if you ask me, can actually be seen as actually demonic, in itself, because it appears to be rooted in envy. I imagine that for them, it's easy to claim it's not rooted in jealousy. So therefore, like, why then are you hosting the event on the same day as the Super Bowl and literally comparing it to the Super Bowl beforehand? Do you get? What's with the needless comparison and competition when even the religious practices you subscribe to advise against such? The other day, we saw some conservative apps being promoted because the same people who conveniently claim they don't use Netflix just happen to have watched something on Netflix long enough to have seen gender non-conforming representation in Cocomelon of all shows. Do you? I mean, like, I'm not saying everything these people do is done in comparison to secular festivities, right? But the few that are, in my opinion, are simply unnecessary. Like, Let's bad Bonnie, his collaborators, people from his community, his fans, and the world at large enjoy this moment without the need for this whole alternative Super Bowl that's clearly set up just to spite the real Super Bowl. If you happen to fall, into this category of people that I'm speaking of now, please, right, check yourself. I know that one thing humans hate is to be preached to. So this just might fly right over your head, or you might have your rebuttals ready like a loaded firearm. But please check the root intention behind some of the things you either do or you support, and be sure that it comes from a good place and not from a place of envy or spite. So yeah, that's where I'll leave this one at. So side note, if please include those rebuttals in the comments, as I too am admittedly trying to decipher things as best as I can. All right, so now down to our main headline, D'Angelo. Okay, I had a brief remembrance of his work in yesterday's video. So today I want to expatiate on just a bit, really, on how I discovered his music, in a bit to celebrate his work and his legacy. So some of you might wonder why I talk about the Grammys a lot on this channel, even though they are just some ceremony to most of you. Well, D'Angelo's just happens to be a big part of the reason why. Around 2019, I didn't have access to like unlimited high-speed internet, but I still loved to listen to music. So my main option was basically to download whatever looked interesting and listen on repeat throughout the week, or even the month, or even the half year, whenever else I had a stable enough connection for new downloads. I knew that I'd never hear newer hits from my friend's device, or rather, I knew that I'd hear from, the newer hits from my friends' devices. So I never really bothered with those unless I liked them a lot. I also didn't want to go for like the older classics, the Michael Jacksons and the like, because I'd either heard them, most of them, growing up already, or knew I'd hear them from someone else's devices. So I just started looking into the Grammys, the year prior, and found out they had so many categories. Earlier that year, I remember Boot Up, Elame had won Best R&B Song, and I just happened to have been mildly obsessed with that song at that time. I was a big fan of the likes of Bryson Tiller, SZA, Childish Gambino, and those R&B meets hip-hop kind of artists. So naturally, I was curious what tracks had won the years prior. Do you get? So I kept downloading and listening until I got to 2016. The song was Really Love, and I remember my brows just being rumpled over that Spanish language spoken word intro, right? I sat on my chair listening to that spoken word with the guitar beneath it, just wondering what in the world I had just downloaded. And then the real part of the song was ushered in with like the most suave bass line and strings I had ever heard. So everything about that track just turned my perception of music, R&B music specifically, upside down. Woo! I knew I needed to hear more, right? So I checked and saw that the song was also nominated for Record of the Year, to which I was like, of course it was. Then the album I saw had also won Best R&B Album. So immediately I knew I needed to try to get my best to like listen to the full album. And after about 3 hours of download time, so I was just standing somewhere. My ears were not disappointed at all. I don't know if you've ever like experienced music so good that all you do is just sit still waiting for it to finish. This was me with the Black Messiah album. I had that album on repeat for weeks later. Then I think in 2 years later, in 2021, I discovered Voodoo through some of these like online music rankings. So with that one too, I was not disappointed once again. Ever since, I've had those two albums in my unofficial list of greatest albums of all time. I honestly cannot recommend giving those projects a listen enough if you haven't already. If you're new to that kind of music, it'll feel like you're hearing music take on another form entirely in real time. So finding out that the mastermind behind these projects is now dead was sad, but I'm grateful for the work he's left behind. I just wanted to share my connection with his work in today's video. So yeah, thank you actually for watching yet another one of these news reaction videos. If you liked it, be sure to leave a like. Also leave in the comments any responses you might have to any of what I've said, okay? Anything I've said in this recording. Thank you again, and I hope to see you in the next one.